Hello there everyone and welcome to Altenew Academy. Today we are going to be playing with some of the new products in the Just Imagine release for our Creative Kickstart class this month. So first off, I am going to take one of the beautiful stamp sets, and this one is the Gracious Peonies. And to start with, I am going to be using this really large peony image, so I'm just going to remove that from the sheet. Now, because this is such a large image, I am going to be using a stamping platform. I am going to be heat embossing the images, so I am going to add a little bit of anti-static powder down onto my white cardstock before I place the image in place. Once that's done, I can then pick up the image using the lid of my stamping platform. As we're going to be heat embossing, I will be using some embossing ink. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap the embossing ink all over the image, making sure that I have it all covered before stamping that down into place onto my cardstock. I'm using white cardstock here, but you could use any color that you wanted. I am then going to add some of the rose gold embossing powder from Altenew. I'm just going to tip that over the embossing ink and it will kind of cling to it. Once that's done, we can heat set, and we're just going to heat set the powder until it's nicely melted and stuck to the cardstock. I'm then going to take the first stencil, so this is the one that coordinates with the Gracious Peony stamp set. I'm just going to pop that into place. Now this is going to cover some of those petals that we have on the image. I am going to add a little bit of tape just to keep that in place. So for this first one here, I am going to be using some of the Peach Perfect, to add in the color. I am adding more of the color to the base of the petals rather than the tips to get that beautiful gradient effect there. Once I'm happy with the amount of ink that I have, I can then remove this stencil and then move on to the second. As you can see, these are really easy to line up, so I'm just going to pop that into place onto the stamped image. And then again, add a little bit of tape to keep that in place. So for this one here, I will be using that Peach Perfect again and adding that mostly to the base of the petals too. Once I'm happy with the amount of Peach Perfect that we have down there, I did want to add a second color. So I am going to be using some of the Pink Pearl ink and again, adding more of that color to the base of the petals rather than the tips. Once that's done, we can remove that stencil and move on to the third one. Again, easy to line up. It's just going to pop into place into some of those petals on the image. Once that's done and in place, I can then move on to adding some color. So first up, I am going to use some of the Pink Pearl. Again, as before, I'm adding more of the color to the base of the petals rather than the tips. I'm using a small ink blending tool, but you could use a larger one if you so wished, whatever one works best for you. Once that's done, I'm then going to move on to a little bit of Coral Bliss. So I'm just adding some of that darker shade just to the base of those petals there. Once I'm happy with the ink, I can remove that stencil too. I'm then going to move on to the fourth stencil. Now this one has the leaves on. You could jump straight to the 5 if you want, but I'm going to go in with 4. And for this one here, I'm going to be using some greens to add in some color. I'm starting off with the Parrot ink and I'm just using a mini blending tool just to add the ink through the stencil. To add a little bit more interest and definition, I am going to add a darker shade just to the base of those little leaves, and I am using the Moss ink for this one here. Once that's done, I can remove that stencil and then add in stencil number 5. So this one here is going to add a second layer to the petals on the flowers. Now first up, I'm going to use some of the Hydrangea ink to add this in. I am adding more of that ink to the base of the petal rather than the tips to get that beautiful gradient effect there. Once I had put the purple through, I wanted more of a darker shade as well. So I am going to grab some of the ultraviolet as well, and this is just going to add a beautiful deep shade right at the base. I am using a mini blending tool here, but you could use a small one or even a large one if you wanted to. It all depends on what blending tools that you have and which work best for you. Once I'm happy with the amount of color that I have there, I can then remove this stencil and then clean them off in some clean water. I'm then going to take the coordinating die for the image, pop that in place, To keep that in place when I do run it through my die cutting machine, I am adding a little bit of tape just to keep it nice and straight. I did want to add a little bit of interest to my background on the card, so I'm taking the Tessellation Puzzles die set, and I'm using this one here that kind of looks like little triangles with legs. So I am going to cut this out of some white cardstock. I am using my little metal shim just to make sure that this cuts perfectly the first time. So once I've cut one of those, I did go ahead and cut another set. So it is going to cut 6 of them with just the one pass of the die. So once I have all of these, I'm going to stick them together. So I'm going to stick 3 together to create kind of a larger triangle with legs. And I'm just going to keep that in place with a little bit of tape. So I'm going to do all of the pieces that I have cut. So I have 4 of these larger images to use in my background. Once I have added the little bit of tape to them, I can then go ahead and secure them from behind. And to do this, I'm just going to be using a piece of foam tape, just cut to size, right behind, and that will keep all of the pieces together if you go over the joint lines. Once that's done, I can remove that tape that we have securing them, and we have them nicely secured with the foam tape underneath. Now I'm going to take a card base, so this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it is a white card base, and I'm going to pop my little flower image into place where I think it's going to sit. Once I'm happy with that, I am going to go ahead and pop in my little die cut puzzle pieces that we have die cut and foamed together. So as you can see, the flowers aren't stuck down, but because I can keep them in place, I can kind of work out where I want these other background pieces to go. Now, I don't want these to jump out at you, that's why I did them in white, but I do think that just having those in the background really does add a lot of interest to the card. What I'm going to do now is I am going to cut off any overhanging pieces from behind just to make sure that everything is nice and straight. I'm going to add some more foam tape behind that large flower image that we have and pop that into place before cutting off any overhanging pieces. Now these overhanging pieces can be used on the card again. So I'm just going to use a little glue tape just to add behind them and then pop them into place just to add in a couple of different foliage pieces, and they're not going to go to waste. I can then remove any of the overhanging pieces from behind again. So I have the Love You from the Versatile Greetings hot foil set in on my hot foiling machine, and I am going to foil this using some of the rose gold foil from Altenew. And I'm going to be foiling this onto some ultraviolet cardstock. And I'm just going to pull that away after I've run it through my embossing machine, and you can see that it is perfect. I'm then going to take the coordinating die set, and I'm going to be taking the shadow pieces that we have for the 2 words. So I'm just going to pop those into place around the foiling that we've just done. Again, adding a little bit of tape just to make sure that everything doesn't move around while I die cut. So once I've die cut, we can see that we have that beautifully die cut sentiment there. I'm just going to add a little bit of foam tape behind the 2 die cut words that we have. And then once I'm happy with the placement, I can remove the backing and then pop them into place. And that is the card complete. I really do hope that you like the card and that you've enjoyed the video as well. If you do create a card that was inspired by this, it'd be great if you do share because we'd love to see. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and we'll see you again really, really soon. Bye-bye.